sounded like he couldn't wait to see me. We would both squeal with delight upon contact. I'd push open the temporary gate to his pen we'd made from pallets and string and sit down in the hay and wood shavings to hand-feed him his breakfast. Then he'd investigate the lawn with his wondrous nose disc, thoughtfully grunting a running commentary. And when he tired of that, we'd go back in the pen and he'd push his surprisingly strong wet snout into the crook of my arm and we'd snuggle. With his big, appealing ears, one shell pink, one black, his questing pink nose, and a black spot over one eye like Spuds MacKenzie, the dog in the popular beer commercial, Christopher was about the most adorable baby I'd ever seen. He was extra cute because he was so little. Each hoof was small enough to stand on a quarter. Imagine an entire pig who could fit in a shoebox. But while his body was tiny, his personality was huge. He was cheerful, inquisitive, and a great communicator. Quickly, we learned to decode his desires. Meant, come here now. What's for breakfast? Slow and deep directed me to rub his belly. Indicated the spot where it felt best. A squeal of "Free!" expressed excitement, though a high pitch indicated distress. He had a special greeting grunt for Howard and a slightly higher one for me. He had me wrapped around his cloven hoof. I loved him so much it scared me. Unfortunately, the delight with which I beheld my baby was not shared by my parents when they saw theirs. They were mad at me. I wasn't turning out the way they wanted. They had urged me to train for the Army in college. I declined. They had kept a membership for me at both the Army-Navy Town Club and the Army-Navy Country Club in Washington, D.C., hoping I might meet a suitable military man. I never did. The person I chose to spend my life with must have seemed to them like the last straw. Howard, with his abundant curly hair and progressive views, could not possibly have seemed less like their vision of a suitable Army officer. Plus, he was Jewish. I was raised Methodist. His family was middle-class and liberal, while mine was wealthy and conservative. In a venomous letter that arrived the week after our wedding, my father had formally disowned me, likening me to the snake in Shakespeare's Hamlet, the serpent that did sting thy father's life. To my parents, I was a different species. Nonetheless, nearly 2 years later, when I'd heard through my aunt in California that my father was sick, I'd immediately boarded a plane to Washington to be by his side at Walter Reed Army Medical Center as he recovered from his first lung surgery. He and my mother were glad I was there, and glad upon my every return. But my husband was never welcome in their home, not even for my father's funeral. Though I was with him when he died, my father never told me he forgave me, and my mother could not accept my living a life so different from their own. But unlike the case with my human family, the differences between Christopher and me, he a quadruped, me a biped, he having hooves, I lacking hooves entirely, and so on, would not trouble our relationship. He was a pig, and I loved him for it, just as I had loved Molly not despite her being a dog, but because she was a dog. And as I would soon learn, Christopher would also, with great generosity, accept and perhaps forgive that I was only human. Other than our physical differences, there was another important contrast between Christopher and me. I was shy. He was not. Christopher was an extrovert who loved company, and he sought it by frequently breaking out of his pen. We secured the makeshift gate to his pen with an elaborate tangle of bungee cords, but Chris, with a pig's high intelligence and flexible nose and lips, managed to dislodge them. He wanted to visit the neighbors. "There's a pig on our lawn. Is it yours?" I'd get a phone call and rush out the door to retrieve him. Sometimes I'd arrive bedheaded and still in my nightshirt, not optimal for socializing, especially with neighbors I hardly knew. But I was always welcomed, because by the time I arrived, Christopher had already charmed his hosts. I'd show up to find them scratching behind his big ears, rubbing